All right, we're going to call the meeting to order. This is a regular meeting of the Montgomery Select Board. Today is Thursday. I'm sorry, this is a special meeting of the Montgomery Select Board. We're on an off cycle here. Today is Thursday, January 23rd. It's 6:33 p.m. First item of business is to make any changes to the agenda. Does anybody have any additions or deletions to the agenda?
I'm not sure whether possible or to put that on that, we want to change to the.
Okay,
whole budget.
we can cover that during visitors, if that's okay.
Sure.
I have something I'd like to speak to when it comes to the wastewater.
Sure. If it's covered under a topic, we'll do that. Any other additions or deletions to the agenda? All right, hearing none. The next item is an approval of the minutes of the January 6th meeting. Is there a motion to approve the minutes as written
I think the date's wrong.
on the minutes itself?
Sorry. Right, shouldn't it be the 6th?
What did it, somebody have a
It says
copy?
the
Hold
8th.
up.
Sorry. That's my error.
Okay, so we've got an amendment to the minutes to change the date, to correct the date to the
Sixth.
6th. Any other notes on the minutes? If not, then a motion to adopt the minutes as amended would be in order.
I'll make that motion.
Thanks, Mark. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thanks, Suzanne. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye or raising your hand.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Great. Motion carries and we've approved the minutes as amended. Next up is Public Works. First item under Public Works is the municipal wastewater project updates and discussions with some potential board actions. First item here is the voter petition that we received. So if folks remember at the last meeting, the board reviewed and acted on a petition to amend the town charter to strike Article 3 of the local option tax, essentially getting rid of the local option tax, and also adding an article which would make connections to any wastewater system optional. The board reviewed the charter petition, found that the signatures were in order and the language was doable. It was something that we could act on, and it was actionable. And so the board approved the petition and we moved forward with it. The following day, I sat down with Liz to map out with her the required warnings and hearing dates so that we could all get on the same page, and pretty quickly realized that there was an issue with dates. The petition was received by Liz on December 23rd. Liz, in her capacity as clerk, reviewed and verified the signatures on that date. The clerk reviews the signatures to make sure there's the requisite number and that the signatures that are counted are from registered voters. Liz does not look at, well, try and look at it, but she does not review or certify the content of the petition. That's the job of the board. So Liz received it on the 23rd. She verified the signatures on the 23rd. That time, she also made us aware that she'd received a petition. The select board acted on the petition at our next meeting, which was January 6th. The issue is that the board needs to hold public hearings at least 30 days prior to the vote. This is for a charter amendment, so specifically related to charter amendments, which is what the petition is asking. The board needs to hold a petition at least 30 days in advance of town meeting. So the last day to hold a public hearing 30 days prior to March 4th is February 2nd. And the warning for that meeting must be posted no less than 30 days prior to the hearing, meaning to hold the hearing on February 2nd, we'd have to warn it on January 2nd. The board did not act on this petition until January 6th. So quickly figured out the math does not work to warn these hearings and follow statutory requirements for the charter vote. So Liz and I immediately contacted our attorney to figure out the best way to handle this. And we worked out a proposed revision to the schedule. What we're proposing here is that the first notice of a public hearing goes up January 28th. The first hearing, the first public hearing is February 27th. The warning and actual ballots get posted March 2nd. Second public hearing is held March 6th, and the vote is April 1st. There is a provision in statute I just want to call folks' attention to, because this was a point of confusion for me, because there's various ways that this is listed under 17 VSA 2645. There is a provision in there that talks about after the warning and hearing requirements of the section have been satisfied, the petition charter shall be submitted to the voters at the next annual meeting, primary or general election. So the question was, does this charter vote have to happen at an annual meeting, primary or general election? Meaning April 1st wouldn't work. I clarified with our attorney that that provision specifically is related to charter proposals. So as it says, the petition charter proposal shall be submitted to the voters, et cetera, et cetera. If you look higher up in that statute, it does indicate and confirm that the select board can bring the question to before the voters at a special meeting. So essentially what we're proposing to do is to meet statutory requirements for posting and hearings is to call a special meeting, which is the Australian ballot vote, on April 1st to put the question on the petition before the voters. Any questions from the board on that?
No, that's.
You know,
like the timeline.
yep, and I'll just say, you know, the timeline issue was not recognized until Liz and I met the day after the meeting. There's been suggestions that the board has tried to drag their feet on this or somehow dodge the question. I don't know what to say other than we weren't. It was simply, we did not fully understand the timeline prior to acting on it on January 6th. And therefore that had already passed.
Chris has got a flip.
I know Chris has a question, but I'm not looking at the audience right now. I'm talking to the board.
Okay. Yeah.
Any other questions on that from the board or discussion from the board?
No, it sounds like we're still gonna do it. It just, we had to do the right timeline. I mean, we're still gonna have the vote.
Yeah. There is a memo in front of you in the packet of material from the town's attorney, Sarah Buxton, that outlines all of this in much greater detail.
It's also worth noting probably that our lawyers had to review the petition to make sure it was good, which over the holidays was not necessarily acceptable, which further extended the possibility of having this meeting or vote any sooner.
Yeah, I mean, whenever we get a petition, we run it by our attorneys to make sure the language is clear and we understand it and it's actionable. So yes, that's another step that would have happened. All right, if there's no other questions, comments from the board, we'll go to questions from visitors on just this topic for now, and we can circle back to like
Peter is
additional
there.
visitors stuff later. And I will ask folks, if you're on Zoom, if you could just mute until you come on, that would be great. Chris,
Yeah, did the board not meet on December the 31st, 2024?
We
Was
did.
there select board meetings? Okay.
yeah, the
So
select
this
board
could have
meeting,
been dealt with at that point.
it could have, but it wasn't something the board had realized was actionable on a timeline that needed to be hit to meet it. And even then, to Suzanne's point, I don't know if we could have gotten the attorneys to review it in time. But yeah, the meeting on the 31st was to address a administrative requirement simply to pass a resolution regarding the ARPA funding. If we didn't do that by 11:59 on the 31st, our ARPA funds would have turned into a pumpkin and been reabsorbed by the federal government. So that was the reason why we met on the 31st. Typically, we don't meet on New Year's Eve.
Yeah.
All right, then, the action. Sorry, I've got a bunch of different stuff related to warnings and actions here, and I want to make sure I've got that all right. So the action would be for the board to warn a special, or the motion would be for the board to warn a special town meeting on April 1st, 2025. To put before the voters the two articles from the charter amendment petition received. With hearing dates scheduled for February 27th, and March 6th, again with the vote happening April 1st. We do have a copy of that warning here, which we will sign tonight if it is passed. So is there a motion to that effect?
We'll make that motion.
Thanks, Suzanne. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Mark. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye or raising your hand.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? One abstention, motion carries, and we will warn it for April 1st. And just for the record, so folks, when you see this, the way that warning is worded, it's a little weird, because it has to show the language that is being struck. So there is a section of the warning which essentially has lines through it. That's required to repeal it, so that's why it looks
Appreciate
that way, yeah. Okay. Next item up here, easement,
Actually, this isn't-
sure,
Is this okay?
Suzanne, you have the floor.
All right, so I there was a lot of Facebook banter today that I'm aware of in the middle of the day and read through all the posts and all the comments, and there was a lot of really strong opinions on there, not that there hasn't been in the past, but it felt like today's conversation was really hostile. And so I wrote something because I felt like I needed to articulate how that made me feel as a select board member, and also just in regard to this wastewater system.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to just blindly speak because I felt like I would say something I would regret. So, this is what I wrote. There's been a lot of misinformation and cruel vitriol going around on Facebook today regarding the wastewater system project, the potential for development in the downtown, and the integrity of the select board. Among many threads of negative comments, the theme of the concern seemed to be around the Trout River developers going to build Section 8 housing, which will entice, and I quote, druggies, riffraff, and other negative descriptions of poverty that truly are cruel and discriminatory
That's what they.
towards people who rely on low.
Sir, hey, you're not recognized. You can speak and get to visitors, please. Thank you.
I can speak when I want.
No, you can't. This is no, you can't. It's a free country, but the way
But-
that these meetings work is you need to be recognized, sir.
If you were gonna build this, just give me a yes or no answer.
Could I just have
If you're putting
a?
these buildings up, who's gonna live there?
Excuse me, I'm
Section
talking.
8?
Let him talk. Let him flow it out. Go
Shelley,
ahead.
give me an answer, yes or no. This goes through, and then buildings go up. Who lives there? Section 8 people or people with decent people with jobs? Answer it, yes or no. Section 8?
I'm not gonna answer it because you're not
Because you
recognized.
can't, because you know.
I'm not gonna answer it because you're not recognized. If you want to ask during visitors, we can have a discussion.
I'll wait for my turn.
All right, thank you very much. Suzanne, please, you have the floor.
So I felt that these are cruel and discriminatory descriptions towards people who rely on low-income housing, many of whom are in this community, whether they use drugs or not. Last year, the complaint against these prospective developments was that they would be inaccessible because they'd be high-rise luxury units. And now the discourse is that they will be too available to the wrong sort of people. This sort of speech is derogatory and it's unproductive. Walter and Abe own that land and they have a right to develop it however they see fit within the terms of the DRB. As a select board member, I have never been approached by either of those individuals to vote on behalf of their interests. We need housing in this town for all income levels and demographics, and Walter and Abe are aware of that, and they will build how they see fit when the time comes, as is their right, regardless of what any municipal officer or community member may or may not feel personally about it. Since both of them are longtime community members who are invested in the fabric of this town, I strongly expect that they are not in the business of exploiting any particular population or scarring the landscape of our community. Secondly, there is this constant accusation of how this project has changed since it was voted on originally because this board is misrepresenting the project for ulterior motives. The US Environmental Protection Agency estimates that the national standard for developing a wastewater system for any municipality can take 12 to 30 months for pre-construction phase, and construction itself can take 1 to 5 years. The Montgomery Municipal Water System, which started in 2005, when it was installed, was a 9-year multi-phase project that went through many versions of modification before coming to fruition. A wastewater system requires just as much, if not more expensive pre-planning, engineering, and research. In order to be sure that we are installing it in an adequate, sufficient, and affordable manner, all of which I understand to be the primary goals of this select board. Adequate, sufficient, and affordable. This takes time and research and feet on the ground, and we check in with the community regularly. With votes, public conversations, the wastewater system has been an item on our agenda since the beginning at every single select board meeting to address your concerns. I don't live in Montgomery Center. I am not going to pay the utility bill for a sewer system, but I go to Montgomery Center and use its services pretty much every single day. I support the economy, and that's why I support the wastewater system. I believe in it and I vote for it because an efficient wastewater system allows a community to install bathrooms in their businesses when they wouldn't be able to with a septic system. We could open a daycare center or an elder care facility because there isn't one now. We could have senior housing. We could have affordable and possibly low-income housing, yes. But we could also have teachers, employees, visiting nurses, anybody with any income. So who knows, someday we could have a doctor's clinic in our town. We can't have one right now. We could have a vet clinic. We could have a brewery. Montgomery is growing and, excuse me.
Guys, can we not talk over each other?
Montgomery's growing, like it's growing, it's been growing. If you've moved here, as many of you and probably you on Zoom have, you're part of that growth. So, and many of you born and raised locals who complain about the system's potential for change forget that a century ago, the population of the Montgomery was triple the size that it is now. And it was a literal industrial boom here with industry and inns and restaurants and churches and apartment buildings and all the things. So your grandparents, your family, they had sidewalks. They had a community that was thriving. We could have that again. It's just an opportunity for business to be able to rent an apartment so your children can grow up here and have a house to live in the middle of downtown that's comfortable and has all the amenities that they want. You don't have to like us as people, but we're not bad people. So if you could please just show a little respect when you're talking about us online or on Zoom or in meetings. It would really just help this community so much to be able to hold this conversation in a way that's productive. And so that's what I have to say about it.
Thanks, Suzanne. If there's no objection, we have visitors later on the agenda, but it seems like there's some folks that are really anxious to ask questions or comment on this. So if there's no objection by anybody, is it okay if we pivot to visitors on this topic?
Yeah, sure.
All right, if there's no objection, hearing no objection, we'll go to visitors on this topic. Generally, we go around the room in the order folks got here, and I don't know who got here first or who was on the Zoom first, so we'll just go by hands. Sir, you obviously had something that you'd like to say, so if you could state your name for the record, and by all means, take the floor.
My name's Sean Johnson, and I live up in Beaver Road. Why, can you guarantee that when you do this, if this plan goes through and them buildings go up, that it's not gonna be all this riprap coming in from the city that the governor already said he wanted to put up here? It's happened in Enosburg, it's happened in Richford, Berkshire. In Enosburg, I know for a fact, because I know people live down there, now they say it's nothing but break-in down there. Why put all these businesses in jeopardy of threatening stuff of stealing shit? Can you guarantee that?
Yeah, so first of all, I can't answer your question completely. One, because I disagree with the premise, and two, I don't know what riffraff is. I don't know what you're describing. I also don't know what comments by the governor you're referring to. So not knowing what you're talking about. I can't guarantee anything against it. The chair of the planning commission obviously has evidence that, the state wants to. This project has far less to do with failed septics and far more to do with shifting the city center homeless from larger cities to rural communities that are ill-equipped to handle this. So Peter might have evidence if you'd like to ask Peter.
Website, there's evidence. to that
There's a
effect.
planning commission hearing tomorrow, and I hope you can bring that evidence so we can discuss it.
Yes.
Sorry, Saturday. So that might be a good forum to have that conversation.
I'd
So,
like to put it out front and center,
Yeah,
because
and I
nobody
hope-
seems to have done that.
yeah.
And I appreciate Suzanne's opinion, and that's all it is her opinion. I agree the language is offensive throughout some of those threads. But your premise that we could have clinics and all of that here is absurd. There's just not enough population here. And your premise that we're in growth period after describing the industrial age of Montgomery versus 1,200 people is ill-found. It's
But we're one of the only communities in Montgomery that's seen a growth rate in the last like 40 years, I think it
and we're
was.
a tiny fraction of where we were way back when.
Well, yeah, sure, but based on like the amount of population that we lost and now we're regrowing, whereas most towns in Vermont are depopulating.
I think, no, they are that, for sure, second home ownership. But your premises, I disagree with probably half of them. It's just opinion, your own speculation. I don't think this is a good move for Montgomery. I think it's gonna introduce things that nobody's aware of because of the state initiatives for housing.
Could you be more descriptive?
I will on Saturday. I'm
Okay,
not prepared to do that now, because I came here for a date. I was hoping you wouldn't skirt setting a date for a petition.
which,
You guys met at least once during that holiday week. And if my understanding is correct, the lawyers work for you, not you for them. So if you need something reviewed, you should put it before them.
so I should go chase them on their holiday vacation?
Well, you can use the phone, John. Use the phone, and they do work for you.
Yeah,
And they do get paid by you. So there were timelines.
great. And also the meetings
Avoiding
of,
them
and
By putting it off.
And also the meetings of this board are no secret, and so anybody filing a petition that has time sensitive actionable criteria can either look at that schedule and know when things might be dropped off to get acted on in time, or at a minimum flag for the board, hey, this is really time sensitive, probably need to look at it quickly. There's
Yeah.
multiple things that everyone could have done differently. I agree. As a point of order, I have a question. Daniel, isn't your mom looking to open a clinic in Montgomery?
She's trying to spend business at Coach Shore.
Yeah, I think it's one of the things that she's discussed with us is the limited wastewater capacity she has there and the restrictions that that provides on her ability to open a medical clinic.
It's a
Medical stuff as well as like laundry services being for community.
Yeah.
Don't have to go across town.
So-
Again, I'm not speaking for her, she's told.
No, I just wanted to, I mean, the question was raised that no one would ever open a clinic here, and so I just wanted to check if I was correct that your mom's looking to open a clinic.
Doctors and
I mean, well, an architect has been working there for the last 3 years, so, I mean, down Main Street is growing. The point I had to ask about on the 31st, was that a special meeting specifically for that purpose? I looked at
Yes.
The minutes, it looked like it was 6 minutes long on New Year's Eve.
It was a
So
6-minute
you guys
long
all
meeting
came in
on
just
New Year's
for
Eve.
that one thing.
Yes.
On a special meeting,
Mhm.
it seems like that's a pretty narrow focus
That is correct.
during the holidays.
Yeah, and I will add that at that point, no one on this board was aware of the potential issue with the timing on the
No.
warnings as they were required to act on that petition.
Sure.
Josh,
Simple question. When they have that Australian ballot, is it all day long or is it only for a couple hours?
the polls will be open from 10 to 7, so the same as it always is.
Mhm.
Yep.
absentee ballots available 20 days ahead.
I believe it's all the standard election procedures that we follow, absentee ballots.
Mhm.
It's
We're
a-
not mailing ballots, just to be clear,
Yeah.
but yes.
Different parameters for like federal elections in terms of mailing ballots.
I mean, the state mails out ballots. We've never mailed ballots to everybody for any kind of local questions. We could certainly discuss in the future doing that, but the plan.
On the warning, it says, an absentee voting relative to said election shall be provided as in chapters 43, 51, and 55 of Title 17 Vermont statutes.
Which I think is the
as
standard
needed.
practice that we
So,
use, yeah.
I'm not 100% sure what that means, but that's,
Anyone
What's
drop
warned?
it off?
Yeah, again, I think it's the same practice we've used all the time.
Okay,
Yes,
Two, maybe three. Location, it's gonna be at the Grange? Or the town hall?
that's Peter. I don't know.
No.
No,
the
the
election.
vote, the vote.
Oh, sorry, I thought you meant the meeting for the planning commission. Yes, it will be at the Grange Hall is where we vote, town hall.
Okay.
Yep.
My second thing is, when I handed in the petition
Mhm.
on December 23rd, Liz told me I was too late. January 16th was the deadline. I'm like, wait a minute, it's December 23rd. So how, for my outlook was, we made it in time.
Yeah, so I'm not sure what Liz meant by that. I don't know if she looked at the petition and she quickly did the mental math and said that something wouldn't work. She might have also been confused when she first looked at it as it being a petition for something to go on the town meeting warning,
She
which
knew.
is a different timeline. So,
She said it was everybody's right to do this petition.
yeah,
To be on town meeting day, because I talked to her that day.
okay, I can't
And I
speak.
even called her back at 3:30 to confirm we had enough votes.
Okay, again, Liz's responsibility is to verify signatures,
Yep.
the number and the validity of the signatures. I can't speak to anything beyond that as far as what you guys discussed.
That was when I went in there, delivered them, she said that, so that's what I brought up.
Okay.
And then one other thing, I did post something on Facebook today. I wrote to everybody saying, instead of bitching on this site,
I saw that, Teresa.
come and learn stuff. I've learned, ever since I've been coming here, I've been learning. I've been researching at home. I've been learning about everything you guys do. And I said, come to a meeting, go to a Zoom. Basically, get off your butt and come learn your stuff instead of bitching about it. Don't bitch about something you don't know anything about. So. Sorry.
Yeah.
I mean, none of us realized the timeline when that petition came in. And now we're still gonna have the vote. We're just doing it legally. And I don't see, I'm sorry we didn't get it done for town meeting, but we're still doing it. Huh?
Timeline something new to you?
The timeline for this is new because this is a charter. It's a different, yes, first time. Well, it's not the first time,
When
but
we first did this 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 3 years ago,
I mean, it is.
that was
different
the
time.
first time a few of us had ever been through this.
Yeah.
But it's not something, it's not
different
something that
timing
we,
than what town meeting is.
yeah, it's not something we do regularly. And
Yeah.
again, town meeting petitions are different in that the petition to add an article to the warning for town meeting is handled under a totally different set of statutes than the charter petitions and charter actions. And again, just so folks are aware of this, say it again. So with the charter vote, whenever a town approves a charter, it goes to the legislature and the legislature then has to act on it and approve it. The legislature can approve it as written, they can modify it, or they can deny it. And that process can take a while. So I'm just putting that out there so that folks are aware that this process can take a while. And
That January 6th.
I know, I just, tell people once, tell them 3 times, eventually.
No, they.
The
Not on that local options tax. If the voters vote to strike that, that's struck. That's what the statute says.
My understanding is that the legislature can deny charter articles, amendments that municipalities put forward. I can't reference a specific statute. All I know is that they have in the past for certain things. If there's a specific provision that says the legislature can not adopt this, but they don't have any control over local option tax charters, I don't know that.
Local option tax.
It's under local option tax in the Vermont statute annotated. It lays it all out, how to petition for the removal of the local option tax, and once that's done, then it's gonna be removed.
Well,
We don't need the approval of the legislature to remove it.
the statute deals with charter and charter amendments. I don't think it specifically deals with local option
The
taxes.
local option tax part. It's a different part than the part you're talking about.
Okay, I might be wrong. My impression has always been, based on my understanding, is that the legislature can both amend charter language and decline to approve a charter change. If there's something in the statute that says that they can do that for certain things, but not for local option tax matters, then it's not what I'm not aware of it, but maybe you're right.
Charlie?
1 second, I'm not sure, we'll go to the Zoom in 1 second. Yes, Peter?
One last thing, I promise. You, December to January 6th meeting, you said if this petition vote struck down the charter and allowed for opt-out, that it would essentially kill the project. You still stand by that?
We'll talk about financing in a minute. But the point I was making was that without the local option tax revenue to support payments associated with debt, and without the user base to spread the user fees, the financing didn't work as far as meeting the affordability criteria. Yeah, I mean, I guess I still stand by that. If the local option tax completely goes away, then that does put a big enough hole in the timeline or in the financing stack that it would make the user fees unaffordable. And as far as the opt-out, I guess my point there is that it would depend, I guess it would depend on how many people opted out. So implicitly just passing that wouldn't, but passing it and allowing it could, because we could end up in a scenario where there's 100 day one users as planned, but 75 of them opt out, leaving 25 to basically cover all of the associated O&M, which is unaffordable. So that would make it collapse.
But the user fees, the smaller by far portion of the support for this.
I mean, the user fees are, I guess I don't know how to describe them as being small or large. I mean, they're small compared to like the couple $1 million other stuff.
Drink, and where's that in front of me?
Everybody's will see you doing that.
Local option taxes contributing a lot more than user fees.
I don't think I'd have to do some math to quickly multiply projected user fees by number of users and how that gets put into the stack and do the delta between that and the local option tax revenue.
Anyway, the point of my question was, you stand by that statement of January 6th, that if this thing happened to go through, and it may not.
Yeah, I mean,
Matters not to me. What matters to me most is that people have a chance to weigh in again, because things have changed. Since
Yeah.
the original.
yeah, with the qualification that like the implicit opt-out language wouldn't be the thing that kills it. It would be the potential for enough to opt out that it created an untenable user fee base, if that makes sense.
Thank you.
What about? I just got one question for you.
Hold on 1 second. Yeah, Charles.
Just a few questions.
Yeah.
To clarify things.
Yep.
So the 1% option tax, was that attached to a septic system?
Who's Charles?
Is it what?
Was that attached to a septic system for the town, the 1% options tax?
Was it attached to the?
Yeah, so the 1% option tax is for a septic system specifically, right?
Oh, for the, sorry.
What it's to, what,
Yeah.
what it's
Yeah.
allocated to. fund.
That's
It's
where, yeah,
based
okay.
for the
Sorry,
debt
sorry. I
service,
thought you
yes.
were asking if we're taxing septic, I'm sorry.
No,
Yeah.
So why couldn't we
That's
just use the 1% option tax, which brings in, what, 80,000 a year, 80,000 so far?
Yeah, so,
So why couldn't we use
He's
that?
telling us not muted.
Go for like 5-10 years or something and just pay for each person's septic. After that's done, that person is on the hook for all maintenance. They have their own mound system or whatever. And then we keep that option tax running and say that 85,000 a year gets recycled to every department. Roads department,
Watch truck.
you get 85 grand extra as a boost, boom, to work on trucks. The next department will get an extra 85 grand. And then however many departments you have, it recycles back. I mean, that could work great, you know, and all the money stays here, everyone's benefiting. I don't see, so the option tax to me seems kind of confusing. I didn't know what the whole point was about attaching it to a huge septic system when
Yeah.
we could just do this and be profitable within 5 years, it would be done. And every person downtown is on the hook for their own maintenance. You got a free septic, you do your own maintenance, end of story, we move on, roads with 85, next year, the next department gets the next department. And you could use the money for beautification, you could use the money to help build,
I think some of the issue with putting septic systems for every resident was the room to put it. Cause you're right on the riverbank. That was one of the big issues. Is the space to put it, each individual septic system.
Right.
Yeah, I think one of the
Yeah.
things that we're already running into is that, part of the
Yeah.
project proposes to replace tanks that are existing that are aged, that won't work. And one of the things we're already
Yeah.
running into is that some of those tanks are within the setbacks.
Okay.
So we're now dealing with how to navigate zoning, which it's different with a municipal project, but like an individual, could potentially not be able to replace their system because they'd be changing it to a degree that doesn't meet putting the same thing back where it was. And it would be in conflict with zoning. So there's any number of things.
Yeah, sure.
And to your broader point,
Yeah,
we can do whatever we want as a town, as long as it's within the
Okay.
ability of the law and statutes.
Right, so that one's right. The next one is, let's say hypothetically, everything goes through, right? Affordable housing goes through. All it takes is this, one person, one bad guy who wants to do something stupid, gets drunk, whatever, wants to break into something, right? I'm not saying everybody's bad, I'm just saying this is the one person you gotta worry about, is the one that's really got bad intentions. How are you gonna evict that person? Like, what is the process for that? How long will it take to get that person out? And
We-
where would that person, you see what I mean? Is it, you might have affordable housing. Are you gonna control who comes in? Like.
So we don't
So
know.
it
Okay, so-
wouldn't, it
that's-
wouldn't
hold
be
on,
public
Yeah,
housing.
hold on, I'm just saying, would you be able to control if
No.
someone bad comes into town? And would you be able to control if someone turns bad and starts beating snot out of someone? Do you have any recourse to be able to get that person out of town or out of affordable housing? Are there any laws that can kind of keep people,
No.
No.
Well,
there's no.
There's not
Well, hang
now.
on.
We don't have a police force here, that's what I'm getting at.
Well, so,
So if there's something bad does happen, the local police, right, and all law enforcement is between 30 and 45 minutes out. So if we project this to a bigger town like you wanted, would we be able to get a police force in town? Or some type of force that keeps crime down?
so just
Or are
first,
we just gonna,
so to the first part of your question, I mean, there are existing laws that govern tenant, landlord processes and evictions and all that kind of stuff. And that's like not in our wheelhouse. So I mean, I don't think anybody here can answer that question definitively as to like, what is the process to remove a tenant for cause? Neither, and also that's not, I mean, like, that's not really this wheelhouse, right?
I just wanna see the thought process, if we're moving in
And
that thought road, because you have to think.
And I
about it.
guess, and to your broader point, I guess what it sounds like you're saying is that if we increase the population in town, it's implicitly going to increase the population of bad people because they make up 1% of the community. And if we have an increase in bad people, how do we respond to it? Other board members can chime in here. I don't know the answer to that. I mean, we've talked about increased police services in town multiple times. It was a question that got put to the voters at one point and shot down. It's been a big sticking point in town ever since I've been around.
It's
Yeah.
gone up more than once.
So,
As I've looked at it.
yeah, so I think law enforcement already is kind of a question on some people's minds. And we've talked about it. We brought it to the voters. Like I said, the last time we did, it was roundly
Yeah.
rejected. So to that point, I'd say like, that's a great question, but I don't quite see the connection with this
Well, an
project.
increase in population will have an increase in crime in whatever degree, right? It's just how it is. We don't have a perfect society.
Yeah.
Nobody's perfect. But it just takes one bad apple to do something bad. And you could think of anything from arson to domestic violence to whatever, someone getting drunk and doing something they shouldn't be doing. And if that person becomes a repeat offender, is there any way to say, hey man, that's it, you're done, we gotta move you up? And I bring this up because another town, I can't remember if it was Battleboro or Westfield, had one of those issues. And it took over 1.5 years for them to get that person evicted. In the meantime, that person stayed there as a neighbor amongst everyone, causing havoc. Not only did it just cause havoc between the neighbors, it made a huge divide in the town, right? So we should at least think, plan for the worst, but hope for the best, what we should do. And so are we really hitting all the bases on this? Or are we just shooting things and just say, hey, we'll make it up as we go along? In 10 years, maybe we'll get a police force, and by then it's just too late. Is that what, the angle we're moving, or are we trying to hit everything at once?
I mean, the board tries to look far out on the horizon and account for stuff. I mean, like I said, we've already had issues regarding crime in the community and discussions of law enforcement, so this isn't like, it's not a new conversation. And as far as population growth and what this might bring with this system specifically, yeah, I guess.
The people that come into this, would they be coming from here?
So-
Or would they be injected from other towns?
I think that there's like a little bit of a misconception that this is going to be like public housing or Section 8 housing. I'm not saying that it's not going to be, but like the town isn't developing anything. It's private developers. And so then they would have the purview of who they sell these homes to, depending upon what they're building. And I have not seen plans for what they intend to build. I don't know if anybody else has, so I understand all of these concerns. Absolutely.
From my conversations with Walter and Abram, they're looking to build, they are considering building homes for the purpose of affordable housing for rent. This isn't a development to sell lots to investors or anything like that. Again, it's just a conversation I've had with them personally, is that it is to help mitigate the affordable housing needs of the community for the number of service workers or just whoever within our community is having a hard time finding a place to live.
Yeah, thanks, Dan.
Do you know, by any chance, how many they want to build or what the,
And I don't know what the metric of like affordable housing is at this point in time, but I think that it's probably a lot higher than a lot of us might think that it is. As far as like income levels and what that actually looks like as far as rent.
And
I don't know. I don't.
Section 8 housing is something that people have to apply to get funding from the government for, right? And neither Walt nor Abram, to my knowledge, have said that they are going to be going for any of that funding.
So private landlords, unless they accept government funding in order to build their projects, do not have to accept Section 8 housing vouchers in any way, shape, or form. If they accept state dollars or federal dollars in order to build their project, then there can be stipulations attached to that. If there have been changes to that legislation with like the new Act 250 laws, I'm not sure. But I do not know that any private landlord has to accept a Section 8 voucher. Now, if the town built the housing, we're not going to, I'm not saying that. If the town built the housing and paid for it with municipal dollars or state dollars or federal dollars, then there are clear stipulations. And that's where it is a difference between privately held land and homes and public housing. So I think there are some like cross wires and some misconceptions about like who owns what and what might happen because of that. But I mean, I think that like maybe if the concern is that there's going to be like problems within the community because of specifically Section 8, which is, I understand that is what the community is saying. Then maybe the conversation needs to be with the people that are looking to develop this property to see if they're planning to accept state or federal dollars and if they are planning to accept Section 8 housing vouchers. Because like we're purely like speculative we can't answer those questions.
That's not your purview.
Yeah.
It's not our purview. Like we don't own the land. Like we can't make those decisions.
Can I say on Section 8 is quite clear, they need a really good reason to reject Section 8. I
Okay.
mean, if someone comes with a voucher and they're online, they really like, you gotta be a criminal or.
Okay,
file in.
thanks, Peter. Can I go to Kim in the back? She's had her hand up for a while.
Actually opened the door, a little bit for some of what I was concerned about. And so this has been a long time in the works. And back in 2018, when this housing crisis really first blew up, and became a focus point of the legislature and local politicians of trying to find solutions for housing. Some of these programs that connected communities that were offered at a state level really started off as a focus for building community, building housing, bringing families to Vermont and keeping Vermonters in Vermont. Over the course of the subsequent 6 years, COVID hit, the hotel motel voucher program went into effect. It was supposed to be 6 months. It ended up being 3 years. It's still a huge crisis. There's a big stigma around Section 8, just because there's this preconceived notion of Section 8. Section 8 is not the only voucher program in regard to housing. There are at least 8 different voucher classified programs when it comes to housing, and they all have their own set of criteria, application processes, on and on and on. A lot of this stuff melds together now. What started off as simply a wastewater system to help bolster a small town is now being used as on the end of the stick for small towns to expand and increase their density and agree to high density housing or multi-income housing or varying range housing. There's a lot of different terminology that's being used, and language is important.
What is varying range? How, I've never heard that term. I'm just curious.
It is a multi-story building, and the basis of it is that the ground level is for retail space. The second level is either for regular apartments or office space for businesses. And then the state has the right to the 3rd floor. Or if it's a 3-story building, the state has the right to the 4th floor, whether that meets local zoning or not. And these are strings that are attached to state and federal monies right now in these classification programs that they're offering to rural towns. I mean, it's on Vermont Digger, it's on VPR. I've heard the governor speak to it. I used to work very closely in those circles. And so it's not a secret, but it's not being talked about either. And so I will ask you point blank, do you know, by accepting the grant money or looking at grant money through the state or federal funding, what the exact strings attached to that are?
Yeah, so as far as the wastewater project goes, there's no strings around housing vouchers or densities or any of that attached to this funding.
No.
The areas for high density housing.
I don't know what priority list you're referring to, so I can't comment on any priority list. We have talked about in the past that, and it's, I just want to be clear, it's Act 181 and the Home Act. The Home Act came first. Act 181 extended and kind of clarified a bunch of stuff. Act 250 stuff was rolled into that. Act 250 is looking at tiers for development and densities and whether or not Act 250 review is warranted. But the stuff we're talking about is Act 181 and or the Home Act. It's not Act 250. We have talked about in the past, the Home Act changes that were ratified in 181 that have to do with, to Peter's point, preemptions of local zoning that look at densities and the height of structures. We ran that by folks from regional planning, folks from ACCD against our zoning bylaws. We had our zoning administrator review it. And the feedback we got was essentially that, and this is not a accurate percentage, it's a metaphor, but like 90% of our zoning already allows what is the preemption there as far as you have to have X units. You can't preclude a unit density of X. Some of the changes I think that would not necessarily be included in zoning right now would be the height of a structure. So there might be, if my memory is correct, there might be something that says with municipal wastewater, the town can't zone against a certain height of a structure. And I remember that specifically because I was in one of the working groups that discussed this, and the point I made was, if you're gonna like force a certain height of a building, then you should be giving every town a ladder truck. So there are some things that would change, but based on the review that we did with the zoning administrator, regional planning, and folks at the state, the majority of the stuff we're talking about, our zoning already allows. We already have higher density housing on Main Street, you know, Sue Reagan's house, the blue house, can't think of, and I don't want to call it that.
Sorry.
The blue house, I mean, we have higher density housing already. Granted, a lot of it's like older buildings that have been converted. They're not new, so they don't have that kind of like stale kind of feeling that you might see like in Morrisville, I guess, was an example. So we have done some review. I think Peter is still working through some of this based on my conversation with you earlier this week.
Yeah.
Trying to get a matrix of like changes together so we
Regional plan.
fully understand this.
Shed some light on it.
Yeah.
There are definitely, facets of the zoning that these programs will, circumvent. One of them is density. They can go 40% higher, given certain parameters. They could go 1 story higher than zoning.
Yeah,
That's cut.
I don't know if it's 40%,
40%.
but I think if you look at anyway, there were some weird things about like percentages in ours and how it would be in effect, because like if you did the multiplier, it would be like building half of a unit, and we don't build half units. So it's like realistically, what can you do versus what the impact is? Anyway, I think this is a great conversation for the hearing on Saturday. But
Saturday's an informational meeting that's probably going to convert back to this subject, but what we're planning on doing Saturday is updating on where we're at with bylaw modernization. I suspect that these questions will come up again, and I am hopeful that I can cite state direction on how this will affect Montgomery.
yeah, and hopefully Emily's providing feedback
Hopefully,
from
yeah.
regional
I think
planning.
she's a good source of information.
Yeah.
We've been asking her for a long time, and it doesn't seem to ever hit the nail on the head, the answers we're getting.
Okay,
So hopefully I'll get some of those answers for Saturday.
okay, great.
Look forward to seeing everybody there.
Anything else, Kim? Okay, thank you. I want to go to the Zoom now. Anybody on the Zoom have a comment or a question related to this topic? Just wave your hand at the camera and I'll recognize you. Yeah, Larry, go ahead. Nope, you gotta come off mute.
There we go. What's the timing for absentee ballots for this vote?
The absentee ballot timeline, my understanding is that it's the same absentee ballot timeline as all the votes we have. Emily referenced the statute that's on the warning. I don't know specifically what it is, but I think that it's the same absentee ballot window that we usually have.
Well, I need to know what that is.
I don't know off the top of my head. But it's chapters 43, 51, and 55 of Title 17 is what is governing that. If anybody wants to look that up.
Liz, I mentioned.
I was
20
hoping you were gonna look it up for
Okay.
me.
Larry, it sounds like 20 days is the timeline for absentee voting, early voting.
From today?
20 days prior to the special vote.
There's a possibility, we will not be here. So how do we vote? We can't absentee ballot before we go.
Are you leaving town more than
Yes,
20
we'll-
days?
No place for mail.
Yes, we will be gone from town about 36 days.
I'm not sure, Larry. Give Liz a call and ask her. Liz as town clerk is like the chief elections officer in the community as far as administering this stuff. So she would really be the one best positioned to answer that.
So you're suggesting Liz is smarter than you?
What's that?
You're suggesting Liz is smarter than you?
She's also prettier than me.
Yeah, that's true.
Those are all
Thank
fake
you.
names.
Thanks, Larry. Any other questions, comments from Zoom? All right, then we're gonna, yes,
I would
Claudia.
like to make just a brief comment,
Yep.
because we moved here from Morrisville 2 years ago,
Mhm.
and Morrisville is changing rapidly in not a good way. You know, I feel, my opinion. But, and I'm just hoping that Montgomery will not follow suit, because I think it's, there's a fine line between developing and destroying.
Yeah.
And progress isn't always the best way to go. And I think it's just a consideration.
Thanks. Yeah, I think Morrisville, I think, has a population of about 2,500, just for comparison to size of communities. Yes, Kim.
On that note, to add to that, is a lot of the programs that I was speaking to before, as far as progress goes, that's really where my concern lies and what I've been looking at as this stuff has come up, and I've been reading bits and pieces of it, is that I'm worried about us falling into a slippery slope of starting projects and then not having a choice. If the state steps in, or if we accept state funding or federal funding or grant monies, that there are stipulations attached to it, whereas then they are able, the state at a state level is able to dictate what we choose, no longer have the choice to or not to do in our own town. And that is happening. And I can feel free to give you a copy of websites.
Yeah, no,
on that information.
I don't think anybody disagrees here that,
No.
like, I think the example we're pointing to a lot is Act 181 and the Home Act and the zoning preemptions. I think there's probably some disagreement and differing understanding as to the degree of that, but I think in principle, like, yeah, you're correct, we should be aware of that. And the planning commission could also, during the course of their zoning revisions, change it to do away with higher density zoning and say, we don't want the wastewater system and we're just gonna do single family zoning in the center. I mean, that's something that zoning commission could put forward if they want to. So. All right, if there's nothing else on that, and just for, I think this came up, but just as a point of information, the local option tax is raising about $80,000 a year. I can't do quick mental math on the breakout of this. So far, it's raised $172,374. We have another distribution probably hitting us in early February. But that's essentially where we're at on local option tax receipts. What are we doing? What are we doing? All right. We're on item 3A2. Easement package and mailing. So, if you remember, as part of this project, we worked with a commercial appraiser to figure out the value of the easements that we would be asking landowners for the system. The easements would be the easements for the connections and stuff on their own properties, as well as infrastructure that crosses their property. We worked with the commercial appraiser to go through and for every single parcel, figure out a value of the easement based on a square footage prorate factor. On a prorate factor, sorry, I lost my train of thought. And so we have for each property essentially what the value of that easement is. One thing that a number of utilities do, co-op, DEC, V-Trans for right-of-ways. When they go out and they ask landowners for easements, they present to them the payment for the easement value based on the appraisal. And standard practice is also to add an incentive payment, which basically says, we get it, this is kind of a pain to deal with. You're gonna have to look at this and everything. Here's extra money on top of that to grease the skids. One thing that we're considering on this project is doing that same framework. So we'd go to every landowner and we'd say, here is what the value of the easement is based on the appraisal, and we're also gonna give you X on top of it. The incentive payments that we're looking at are $500 on top of the easement. These are all billed back to the project and the funding stack, so it's not like we're pulling it out of the general fund or a reserve account. It's all billed back to the project funding stack. So there's no tax implication here on the general fund or anything, just to be clear. And so what I'm looking for tonight is feedback from the board and or approval to include the incentive payment in the easement, what's the right way to phrase this?
Easement package.
In the easement package,
Yeah.
yeah. Folks have any questions about that? The value of these easements range from anywhere on some property. The lowest one I think we've got is like $75 for the value of the easement. The highest one that I think I saw on the list was like $3,000. And again, it's just based on square footage of impact based on what's going on.
Are the easements, just for clarification, for my understanding, the easements are paid once,
The value of the easement is a one-time thing.
one time?
Yep, yeah. And again, all of that is billed back to the project. So again, it's not like there's a line item in the general budget that says like, this is coming out of the property tax revenue or something.
Do you have a general estimate on what all of them would be,
Combined?
like package deal? All of the easements will cost,
Yeah, I do.
and then also how much it would cost if everybody were given an additional $500?
Yeah, we can do that pretty quickly.
Sorry to ask you to math at this time of day.
No, it shouldn't be that hard. If I can just bring this spreadsheet up. So the total value of all easements is $168,000, $168,049.80.
Say it again.
Is $168,049.80. And then if you multiply that by, and this is subject to change as we're talking about, we've talked about kind of trimming some of the higher cost of connection portions of this. So this number might change, but as it is now, and then if you do 123 by 500, you're looking at $61,000.
123 is like the estimated
120, so
number of users at this
That's
point.
what it's showing here, but I don't.
I thought it was less.
It is less. This is showing. This, okay, this has got some things combined. The number of day one connections
Yeah,
that we're looking at under the various frameworks would be somewhere between 99 and 117 people.
I'm gonna do 117 times 500.
Yeah, so you could say
58,500.
58, 60,000. Yeah,
Yeah.
Josh,
How many connections is that septic available, or how many connections will a septic hold? And all, like there's more protected to it.
yeah, so it's not based on number of connections, it's based on volume of flow. I don't have.
Water.
Again, it depends on what the connections are. So like, if a house connects, then the flow there is different than, if a business opens that has a bigger flow, or to your point, a brewery. And so essentially, whenever a new connection is proposed and we get an application for it, the town would then basically say, this is our capacity, we're using this much of it, we have this much left.
What's the percentage left then on the septic right now, will be left? Only 120 users. Flows, so percentage left then.
I can try to find that number. I mean, essentially, the capacity of the system was based on going through every individual property and saying, what is this being used for now?
Yeah.
And given our zoning, what could this be used for? So we basically said, if everybody went whole hog on their property and built to the greatest extent of what they could, what is that flow capacity? And that's what we were building for.
So,
Yeah,
so this system already has sort of a maximum capacity. So with that in mind, this idea that Montgomery could end up being the next Morrisville or the next Stowe or whatever, it's kind of unrealistic in the sense that this system could not support that sort of growth. There is a limit to it.
there is a limit. I don't have the numbers to tell you how much or how big compared to town
So-
X or Y, but
Sure,
I know when we built the water system, we built it for expansion. You know,
Yeah.
It's, you can.
I mean,
add on quite a
naturally,
few more.
but we
if you
haven't
need to.
seen an explosion since the water system was built
Not too
particularly.
many, we have a few more connections.
yeah.
There would then have to be like a process by which people, if they were building something, would apply to be put onto the system and like,
Yeah, there'd
if
be,
it
yeah,
couldn't be
yeah, no, yeah, there's a point at which,
handled, it would be like
No, you-
denied
would it be,
and
no, you
then.
can't build, or would it be,
Right,
you can build, but you need an independent septic system?
so it'd be something where somebody sends and again, the ordinance that we're drafting, which we'll get to reviewing and editing and stuff hopefully soon. We'll lay out this process, but it would be a system whereby a landowner would come and say, similar to a driveway permit or a water connection, this is me, here's what I'm doing, I want to connect.
Yeah.
The commission would look at it and they would say, okay, your projected flow is X, our capacity left is Y. We're gonna approve it based on capacity, or they say like, no, we're not gonna approve that. Like if
Yeah.
somebody wanted to do something that ate up all of the remaining capacity in town, the board could be like,
Yeah,
we'd rather not do that. Like, we wanna actually have other things happening. So, that framework will be worked out in the ordinance. Yes, Chris?
Yeah, so these easements that we're talking about here, are these the easements for the tank that you wanna put on my property and the line running to it and the line running in front of my house? Is this what we're talking about right now?
So the easement is for any infrastructure that is on the private property, which is outside of the right of way.
So now if I decide I don't want your money and I don't want to connect, and I say you can't have my property. So are you gonna take me to court to force me on the system?
The board would have to make the decision at that point, but that would be the process, is we would basically say to, you know, with the easement stuff, here's the stuff. We'd like a response in X number of days, please get back to us. X time passes, the process would be to essentially take all of those landowners, lump them into one action and go and say, look, we want these easements, we gotta connect these people. The judge would review it, they'd say, yeah, your valuations look good, or no, this is BS. He'd come up with something and then say, yeah, this is basically, you know, the payment that's gonna get made and here's the connection. Or the judge could say, no, you're full of shit, Montgomery, take a hike. There's laws and statutes.
But you will take me to court. Cause I don't plan on connecting this thing.
Yeah,
So now you see what my problem with this system is, right?
yeah, and we've had this conversation, Chris.
We have.
Yeah, and
So I'm basically under threat of you taking my property,
yeah,
and I don't like it.
understood.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But also, you guys are gonna be cutting back on this too, cause you ain't gonna have enough money to do this.
I don't count.
You've already said that, where you're gonna cut a lot of it out.
Yeah,
Because if the
so-
bids come in more than they need to be, you're gonna start going down. So Hazen's Knots may not even be affected,
Don't
or,
count on that.
I know that, I know, I know the games, everybody's got games with this shit, I know that, but I've heard you talk a number of
Yeah.
times where you're gonna be cutting some of this out if your funds don't come in.
yeah, so to reiterate what we said before is that based on the money available and the size of the system and the cost of connection, there's essentially three different scenarios we're looking at as far as the core of everything, the core plus this area, and then the core, this area, and this area. the cost of connection goes up as you have a greater distance between connections, more pipe, more everything. And so, yes, there's, you know, a scenario based on funding where we say, hey, you know what? Given this framework with all these connections and the cost of it, the user fee is not affordable. So we're going to trim the higher cost of connections to get the overall system down. There's a user-based calculation that has to get done to say, is that still affordable? But as I said before, the metric the board's always looking at is what is that bottom line affordability? And I will say, as we're talking about affordability, since we last met, sorry, time is one of those weird concepts. Yeah, since we last met, we did work through with the state that they are going to convert all of the ARPA loans that we were given into state grants, essentially doing the same kind of shell game, for lack of a better word, that we did with the funds to say, yeah, we're absorbing them into the general budget to offset other costs, and then they become Montgomery dollars. The state's gonna do the same thing with the ARPA dollars, basically reprogram it into state dollars. And what that does is it releases.
You're talking about the ARPA dollars from the feds. They're taking them into their state coffers.
So the ARPA dollars went to the state and the state then allocates ARPA funds to these projects. What the state is proposing to do and what they're doing is they're going to then kind of shuffle things around so that the money they're giving us is not federal ARPA money, it's state money. It's the same amount of money. It's same money, it's just different labels which release it from different restrictions. In doing that, it releases it from federal restrictions that would preclude paying federal debt service using the ARPA dollars. And the reason that's important is because if folks remember, if we go way back in time to the original USDA grant loan package that this all kind of started from, the USDA Rural Development offered us a loan of 5 million and change and a grant of 6 million and change. We had a problem where we essentially couldn't access that $6 million because in order to get to it, we had to burn through the loan. Now, if the ARPA funds are released back as state dollars, we can use those funds to pay off that loan, that $5 million loan. Which then releases an extra $6 million that we previously did not have access to. So within the last few weeks, we have basically unlocked another $6 million back into this project budget. Doesn't mean that we're still not considering cost of connections and overall project stuff. But from a funding stack perspective, that's a change which has a significant impact on affordability. You know, right now, as far as user fees go with some of these scenarios, and again, I will say another time, the cost of this system is based on projections and estimates. We're not going to know until the bids come back, but based on everything we're seeing now, the user fees, depending on the size of the system, could be on the high end. And again, this is the numbers we have now, around like $400 a year. On the low end, if these things come together, the user fees could be like $170 to $200 a year. So that's where things are looking right now with this. As always, it's subject to change, probably will change. We're not going to have the fixed project budget until we know, but it is looking a little bit more positive.
Those
as far as the
estimates that
user
you're
fees.
giving are for like a single family home, is that
So it's,
accurate?
that's the equivalent user rate. And so the equivalent user rate is essentially the average over the whole. And then things change based on usage. So if you're, you know, a 1-bedroom house with one person in it, your user rates are going to be lower than, say, I don't know,
The business.
the inn, right?
Yeah.
So there, it's not like uniform across the board, everybody, but based on the projections that we're using and we're seeing, that's kind of what we're looking at as a potential low end. So,
Harlan,
yes,
when do these easements come out? When do you know?
Yeah, I don't know specifically, a date they're gonna get sent out, but we're shooting for early February. So I'm hoping within the next couple weeks.
That, if you're gonna do that beginning of February, what if you get voted down with the town with our April 1st meeting? Then what happens?
Then we don't need the easements.
Okay. But how, you just said though, we send easements out, you get so many days to say yes or no. So if you're doing it beginning of February and our meeting, our thing's not until April 1st.
Yeah,
It's not giving people a whole lot of time. You know what I mean? Cause you have like probably a week or 2 weeks to have that easement sent back to you.
yeah, we're looking at,
It ain't gonna be 2 months. so-
I think it's like 6 weeks is what we're looking at as far as like sent out and we're asking for a return. But yes, and I brought that up to the project team before too, like, what if we end up like holding all these easements and there's no project? We just released the easements.
And so then when do the easements, because there's like a payment attached to the easements, when is that made? Like,
Yeah.
if things go forward, when is that made?
Yeah, it'd be made when the easements are conveyed. So, yeah, there's a chance that like we use all this money to go buy these easements and the project collapses and then we say, hey. Well, that was a waste of money. But
Government's good at it.
I
like,
got another
then we
question.
release,
So basically, you guys are giving money for people so you can dig on their property, you're baiting them, not baiting, you're giving them money, you're giving them an incentive to do this. Not on their own accord, but for money, basically. Cause I ain't giving, I don't want no money.
Yeah.
It ain't gonna be on my land, so, you know, but you're basically buying people to join this. That's what the easement, and if they don't say yes, you're gonna take them to court. So. It's, whatever, you
okay.
guys gotta do what you gotta do, I guess.
Can we circle back to the question at hand, which is the board's feelings on adding the incentive payment to the value of the easement? So it'd be $500 on top of the value of the easement. Again, this is all coming out of the project financing, so it's not coming out of general fund. It's not coming out of the property tax base. We have the money to do this, essentially is what I'm saying.
But isn't that more a bribe?
Yeah.
I mean, right now, I'm honestly shocked about the extra $500 for an easement.
I mean, you could think about it that way, but again, like, it's something that, like, all big utilities do, V-Trans does it,
Doesn't
it's,
mean it's right.
I'm not, I
I
mean,
mean, honestly.
I'm not gonna get into like moral arguments, sure, but like, I'm just saying, it's a standard,
For an easement, I understand that, I had that in Morrisville happening with my property.
yeah.
But to incentivize people to take the easement before there's a vote, I think that's just, I don't even know why that
People
would
gonna
be the
spend the
case.
money, they ain't gonna be able to give it back to you.
Where does the money come from? Out here? Where does it come from?
This is all money that comes out of the funding stack, which is the various
So it takes it from the federal
state,
money?
federal,
Yeah.
state and federal sources.
Taxpayer.
Is there expiration date on any of that money?
There's
I thought there wasn't, so like.
the ARPA, so the ARPA money had an expiration date
5 years, right?
with the ARPA money had a date, had to be used by, but with the conversion of that to state funds, my understanding is that those deadlines don't apply.
Much of that is government funded, like federal government funded.
How much of,
That's that. It's that whole separate money, comes out as federal funded. There's the new administration taking back all kinds of federal money, and I'm gonna take it back from that too.
not this, because it's already been obligated. So it's not like it's pot of money that they're gonna give out, but they haven't yet. And I don't know the split state and federal, because again, like, it's gotten so convoluted with money washing. But right now it's like 96%, 97% state and federal money. Because you have the local option tax that's plugged in. So anyway,
So, just one question.
yeah.
does it, do the easement letters have to be sent out in February? Or could it wait until the vote in April?
The
I mean,
easement
what's the
letters,
downside of waiting?
yeah,
till April?
because the easement letters go out, it initiates a timeline by which there's a timeline for response, action for non-response, potential for court action, the potential for appeal, the potential for da-da-da-da, and the project cannot get the, I'm blanking on the word for this, but it's like the project can't get the green light go until the easements are in place. And so delaying the easements pushes the go back, which would mean that we would lose like all of the 2025 construction season, part of the 20s. So basically, the farther we push those back, the farther it pushes the whole project back, and we start to lose more time, and everything gets continually pushed back.
Chris is gonna push it back more by not easement.
I mean, I'm not gonna say just Chris, I mean,
I know.
anybody could.
Yeah.
Hopefully everybody doesn't allow it.
Is the length of time with the easement like a state specification? Is that like a statute based?
Yeah, I mean, there's,
Like you
Well,
have to
no.
give X
No,
period of time?
there's-
Because I'm hearing what
no,
what
there's,
people are saying, like
no,
if there's
no.
gonna be another vote.
no,
then
there's
are we-
not, it's not statute based, it's more based on like, if you play this out, how long can the whole thing take, and where does that put us? And we
Mhm.
can't get I can't get the word out, the notice, no, it's like the permit from the state, basically, to say, yes, go.
Yeah.
We can't get that until we've cleared right of way.
Yeah.
Actually, I don't even know if we can,
But we have a meeting.
we
on
can't,
April
we
1st.
can't actually accept, I don't even think we can accept the bids until right of way's been cleared.
Probably not.
So anyway, the more this gets pushed back, the farther it is to basically getting the bid information back. And so the reason why we want to do it now is because it keeps things moving in a way that doesn't keep pushing things back another year and a year.
Well,
I
I
mean,
think,
in Morrisville, it took, I mean, the easement that I was a part of and 14 other homes were a part of, it took years in court.
yeah,
You
Yeah.
know, so it could be, if one person doesn't want to, it could be pushed back a lot anyway.
Yeah, I think the. Nineteen to 24 months. Is essentially kind of like if everything goes as long as it totally could, that is potentially. How long that could take. Yeah.
I think you've come up with a price for each easement and just leave it at that and not add the 500. I think. I mean,
I think it's nice to
Yeah.
offer community members and, I mean, extra
Well-
money whenever we have the opportunity to, but I wouldn't want it to be misconstrued as a bribe, so.
Yeah,
I don't, again, I
know.
don't think bribe is the right.
I
word.
know, but I know,
This-
I don't.
this is like
I don't mean that it is, but it
standard
just
practice.
seems like it-
You're asking them to vote yes for your project by giving them money,
I'm not asking them to
It's
vote
No.
yes for the project by
No.
giving them money.
no,
because you're not
just
waiting.
asking to
for
go
our
on their
meeting.
property.
All right, hey, can we all stop talking over each other? I would like an answer from the board on this so that I can move forward. I mean, I think like, we've got the money, it's not coming out of our pockets, footnote, like, we all pay for it out of our taxes, the federal government, yes, whatever. We have the money, it's not coming out of the property tax base, the general fund.
Yeah.
We can use it if it helps people. I don't see a downside to it. I mean, I get this, like, you're bribing people narrative that people can push, but like,
It is.
I don't know.
Is there a way to like reframe it and like save that $500 to once you're hooked up to the system, you get your initial, first payment or first year's payment paid or whatever with that $500 instead? As like
I mean, that would create a little bit more of a complicated tracking mechanism for stuff as opposed to like, here's the $500, go put it in your mattress and when the bill comes,
Sure.
use it, like.
Yeah.
I'm cash.
How
So,
many
people would get those $500? Let's put it this way.
107.
Everybody who is getting an easement, yeah.
Is that money better in the community? for things?
Oh, yeah.
No, this is, I've tried to say this multiple, this is money specifically earmarked for this project. We cannot use this money somewhere else. We can't put it towards the roads. It's
this.
for this.
$85,000 in brine is what it is.
So you're gonna give these people money. and then
Anyway.
if we vote this out on March, April
You know what?
1st, whatever it
I'm
is,
gonna-
you're gonna end up, people are gonna end up giving you money back?
No, they don't get the
No.
money
No.
before the vote.
Okay, that's what I misconstrued here, because if you give it to them before this vote that we're having on April 1st,
No.
they're already spent the money.
Yeah, I mean, again, I could be wrong as to when we would actually make the physical payments, but I don't think the physical payment would be handed to people or mailed to people prior to April 1st.
Can we ensure that it's not?
I can look into it. I mean, the stuff I've got here is all, it's not fixed dates. It's once this happens, X number of time has to elapse before Y,
Yeah.
pushing it, so I can't tell you like, I'd have to look at a calendar and physically plot this out. I hear the question though, and I'll try to chase that down. So I'll make it easy. I would move that the board, include the $500 incentive payments with the, easement valuation payment to the landowners, for the easements for the wastewater system. Is there a second? Okay, if there's not a second, then the motion doesn't go anywhere. Next up is a loan approval. Hopefully this is really simple and doesn't cause a lot of time because this is something the board's already
Yeah.
approved. It's just signing this loan agreement. So this is the $200,000 loan agreement through the state revolving fund. We signed this application
Yeah.
a while ago. It's now gone through underwriting. This is just signing the loan agreement. Again, it's $200,000. It's designed to unlock $100,000 of additional subsidy money, which is why we've been using these loans the way we have, because each
Yeah.
one comes with subsidy. So it's the same thing we've done the last time. It's the $200,000 we've discussed. All we need is a motion to sign loan agreement RF1 382-2.0 in the amount of $200,000.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, thank you, Mark.
I'll second it.
Second from Suzanne. That's the one number right there. Is there any further discussion? Hearing no, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye or raising your hand. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? One abstention, motion carries. Thank you. I'll put that there for signatures at the end of the meeting. All right, streetscape project. There's still like a kerfuffle about whether or not the ditch at the rec center is a wetland.
Yeah.
I think we're moving in the right direction. We've been able to provide V-Trans plans for 118 that show that fill was brought in to create the roadbed, which therefore created that area's drainage, and therefore it was a man-made
Yeah.
wetland, which would give it a categorical exclusion. So I think we're moving forward with that. The hiccup now is that the state's historical review folks have flagged stuff that apparently they're questioning.
And so now
So-
they wanna dig
What
it
are
out
they
and
asking?
look for
The same
artifacts.
question?
I don't know.
That's what they did all like out on 105.
Yeah, so.
That's what they're gonna do.
So anyway, we're trying to work through that. We cannot go through NEPA until this is figured out. And NEPA is what we need to get through in order to get the notice to proceed from the NBRC, Northern Borders Regional Commission, to keep that $600,000 we have. And they're getting kind of antsy. So I don't have any more updates other than that's where we're at.
Aren't they the people that take 2-3 years to figure something out?
Mhm.
Good.
NEPA, we should be able to move quicker through this once we clear this hurdle. Because what we've also done in the background of this is basically get everything to the people that need it for the review and kind of like, hey. Like, do us a favor, look at this now, and so that when this is resolved, you can just stamp it. So anyway. Man-made created wetlands are still an issue, and apparently there's other historic review that has to be completed to get
They
the
better
green light
find some
there.
freaking dinosaur bones under there.
Or, yeah, massive oil deposits. So that's the issue there. We're still working through it. Thank you, Mark and Doug, for sitting down with them the other day to go over the hydrant and valve
Yeah.
connections.
Yeah.
Looks like all that's gonna be good. There's a couple of valves that are a little bit touchy, but it sounds like overall, the
Yeah,
project.
I think every hydrant on Main Street is gonna have to be moved, so I said, we would buy the hydrants. And then if they're moving them, they might as well put in new hydrants
Mhm.
on Main Street. But they're all gonna be moved, so, but there was an issue of who to buy the hydrants, but we're gonna replace them anyway, so.
Mhm.
They're gonna be moved, and they'll pay for moving.
Yep,
That was-
win-win.
Yeah,
All right, awesome. Next up here is public safety building town office renovations. So tonight, what's before the board is just approving it's a change from Millbrook. So Millbrook is the engineering firm that we're working with. Michael Dugan
Dugan.
is the architect we're working with. Michael Dugan was going to get the engineering for the vault done through one of his subcontractors. He has now backed off from that because of some capacity on his side, and so now Millbrook is looking to get approval to go to Northeast Structural Engineering for that work. So David Pratt, owner of Millbrook, was referred by Michael Dugan to Brian at Northeast Structural Engineering to complete the engineering vault designs. Michael was going to be the one hiring the structural engineer and carrying that with his costs originally. So instead of being carried by Michael and factored into his time and rates, this will be taken care of by David and just be factored into the construction manager expenses. So it's essentially the exact same stuff, the exact same, budget stuff. It's
Yeah.
just they're doing it, not Michael. It's basically $4,750 that we're now swapping over.
So it's just a reallocation from
Yeah,
one
all
firm
it
to
is, yeah,
to the other
yeah,
firm?
all it is authorizing Millbrook to do this, with Northeast Structural Engineering.
Okay,
So all we have to do is just authorize, yes, you can work with that subcontractor for this under that framework. Does that make sense to people?
Yeah.
Okay, so all I'd be looking for is a motion to approve the proposal from Millbrook to subcontract to Northeast Structural Engineering.
for the same price.
Yeah,
I'll make that motion.
thanks, Suzanne. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second from Leanne, thank you. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we can vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye, raising your hand.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, motion carries. Thank you. General updates, any general updates on Public Works, Mark?
We've got the new replacement truck.
We
Yeah.
got it.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, seems to be going well.
Good.
We just gotta figure out what to do with the truck with the balloon engine. We'll figure that out eventually. But we've got 3 trucks going right now. So the graders, it's in the shop and they're working on it, but haven't got an update yet. But, yeah.
And truck one is back, right? Did I see it?
It's
in-
back.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
Did you
Chris,
buy it or lease it?
we bought it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good move.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, we bought it. And we put a 2-year warranty on it.
Yeah. All right, if there's no other updates, we can move on. Item E here is the water budget. We're gonna table that to a future meeting. That's not something that we need to have for the warning for town meeting. So we can approve that at a later meeting and then stick it in the book. Okay. Visitors, anybody here for visitors for something that we have not discussed yet? Yes, Claudia.
I'm here for the town hall committee. And we wanted to ask for an extra $4,000 for the town meeting day, because the kitchen, there needs to be an emergency exit and more drains and more to be in compliance to use that kitchen on a really regular basis. And to maybe even have other people rent it to do cooking classes or something. So we would like to add to the budget was 10,000 to add 4,000 to that.
Okay. We're gonna get to the budget in a couple minutes, so if we can just put a pin in that, because right now we have an approved budget from the budget, we have a proposed budget from the budget committee that this board needs to review and act on tonight. So we'll put a pin in that until we get to the budget. Thank you for that. Anybody else have anything for visitors that we haven't talked about yet? On the Zoom? All right. ARPA, so I apologize for not having this at the last meeting, but I do have the balance for everybody. So the total ARPA monies, and this is like the town's money that was from ARPA that we received, that we then kind of reabsorbed to cover expenses. So it's no longer ARPA money again. But the original allocation was for $359,010.15. Expenditures against that have been made for the streetscape engineering match, the LED street lights, and the Reagan Road Power Project. The remaining balance as of December 30th in that reserve is $288,017.27. So that's what's left in that. And this will be in the town report too. I just wanted to get that back to folks since I didn't have that handy the last meeting. The flood resilience meeting, just a placeholder. This is February 3rd. They're coming to the select board. So our next regular meeting, the Natural Resource Conservation District will present on their report and next steps there. So just flagging that for folks.
Yeah.
Item C here, hazard mitigation plan. So we did approve a consultant, regional planning, and I don't have any next steps. I didn't know if Sean was gonna get back with anything by tonight, so no report, but when I hear from Sean on next steps, we'll pass that along to folks. Which brings us to new business. All right, conservation fund application. Sorry, Lynn.
I'm on the conservation board, and we received an application for, a grant from us. We met, the conservation board does not meet normally in November, December, January, February, just because it's winter. But because of this application, we called a Zoom meeting so we could discuss this because they needed to get an answer. So the applicant is Sweet Properties. The landowner is Shannon Kane. And it consists of 395 deeded acres. They have already, or they're in the process, you probably know better than I do, Charlie, that they have already conserved 735 acres. So 2 different parcels, but they are adjacent and contiguous.
Yep.
Okay, they have not restricted it to public use. They want the public to use it. They're gonna sugar it. So you take 735 and 395, which will be forever conserved in Montgomery. And there's nothing, from our perspective as a conservation board, we think that that's a wonderful thing.
How much was it, Lynn? 7, what?
Okay, so the original property
Yeah.
that we did last year was 735 acres.
Thank you.
Okay, and they did exclude, I think on that one, Charlie, 40 acres, or on this one, 40 acres, because, and that's closer to the road where they may in the future, it's excluded.
Yeah.
Build a house. They wanted to keep out that property, that amount of property. So we met, we discussed it, we developed bullet points of what our goals are before we agree to
Yeah.
whether or not we think it's a valuable piece of property. And because it's contiguous, because it's such a huge amount, we all agreed that I would come to the board tonight and ask you to take a vote on it because we think it's very valuable and it should be done. The amount of the grant that the Conservation Board will be giving them is $5,000.
Yep.
And we certainly have the $5,000.
Yeah.
So for us, that was a no-brainer, and we will make the recommendation to you, but you are the ultimate decision.
So where was that property again?
Yeah,
Okay,
so
Okay.
if you look at the map up there, you look at this map, this is Montgomery Center.
Yeah.
So this property stretches basically from behind Gaston's barn along this whole ridge line, all the way down into the deep Gibu. These parcel lines are not accurate, but
Oh,
basically
okay.
it goes all the way down to just past Godfrey Sugar House.
Okay,
So if you're on 118 driving south, it's the ridge line that you look at as you
Oh.
drive south,
okay.
looking that way.
So this will be all conservative.
Yes.
Okay.
It was originally Gaston's many years ago, and then he sold it to the 600 Hunting Club. And then he sold it, then they sold it to Sweet.
Sweet properties.
Yeah,
Okay.
so, yeah, it's turned over, yeah.
Yep.
So I'm coming just to ask you if you are in agreement of that.
So the motion would be to approve a $5,000 expenditure from the Conservation Reserve Fund to support the Suite 2 Conservation Project for 395 acres.
I'll make that motion.
Great, thank you, Emily. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mark. Is there any further discussion? All right, hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye or raising your hand. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, motion carries. Thank you, and thank you for your work on this.
Thank you so much.
All right, getting into budget discussions. This first item is just the flag for the board. One of the things that the budget committee had talked about was in trying to basically trim everywhere we can, is to go back to all boards and commissions having somebody on the body serve as their secretary. There's a few boards in town that have paid secretaries that take minutes and do things like that. It's an added expenditure. It's not massive, but it's money that we're trying to trim, as we're trying to trim everywhere. It also does create some interesting employment stuff, because technically they get put on payroll, which impacts our insurance, our workman's comp stuff. So there's some kind of other stuff that repercussions behind the scenes. So what the budget committee was kind of saying is, look, we're gonna go back to the old framework of all boards having a board secretary that takes the minutes as a member of the board, just like we do. Anybody have a problem with that, or have a question or a concern with that? I didn't mean that, like, do you have a problem with that? Like, I wasn't trying to be confidential.
we know how
Does anybody
many-
have a question or a concern with that?
Do we know how many boards
It was-
have
I think it was two.
paid secretary?
There's at least two.
Yeah.
There might be three. I didn't do a full, yeah.
Charlie, how much do they normally get paid?
That's a good question, Larry. I don't have that information handy.
You do understand, you can write, general checks for up to $600 without having to, be involved with payroll.
Yeah, no, I think annually these are coming to, I want to say when Aaron said it, it was somewhere around $1,600.
Okay,
Maybe north of 2,000.
Yeah, I think it was.
I don't remember exactly, but yeah, it was over that threshold.
Yeah,
Mark, you should jump in on that. You don't have enough to do.
yeah.
Yeah. All right, well, that's
Okay.
embedded in this budget in the background, but that's something that we're gonna go back to the boards and let them know that we're gonna. So we'll carry through FY 25 with the same framework, but come July, we're gonna go back to board secretary functions. Okay, that brings us to the budget adoption and the town meeting warning. So on the budget, folks should have a budget in front of them. Some high points on the budget. Under revenues, most things are pretty the same. There's a small bump in state aid for roads based on their formula. It's
Yeah.
somewhere between $5,000 and $7,000. But other than that, revenues are about the same. The one thing that's gonna show up in revenue and expenses is delinquent taxes.
Yeah.
We are carrying a delinquent tax balance, which is like 3 times higher than any time I've seen it in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
The current delinquent tax balance is $205,000.
Wow.
So that's a hole that we need to basically absorb. And the other problem is that the longer these delinquencies get carried forward, it's kind of creating a domino effect into future budget years, including this one, because some of these delinquencies are from like 2023. So we're gonna work with CAT to try to work with folks to get payment plans in place and do everything we can to help people come up with a plan to work with us to get these things covered. But at the end of the day, we're probably gonna be looking at initiating a tax sale sometime in the spring on a handful of properties, some of which have like $35,000 in outstanding taxes due. So
Yeah.
if we can resolve it before then, great, but that's the next step here. So delinquent taxes, bring attention to that. When we go to expenses, in the town office, we're seeing some slight increases. On hardware, Open Approach is gonna be replacing computers, because most of those are kind of dated at this point, having issues. Those are about $1,000 each. Town office contracted services, Nemrick, which runs all of our grand list, and accounting software, they increased their rates. Audit services, our audit costs did go up, but part of that is related to the wastewater project, because when you get over a certain amount of revenue from federal sources, it pushes you into a single audit, which is more complicated. That's not gonna show up in the general fund because that increase is being booked to the project. So I'm just flagging that our audit this year is gonna be more complicated. It's not gonna be more expensive in the general fund budget, so it won't impact what we're talking about tonight, but just if you happen to hear Erin say, oh my God, this is so complicated, that's what she's talking about. So, thank her for all of her work. Website costs are down because Liz is managing that in-house. Server and tech support, there's some increases there that we're gonna be seeing. There's also future plans to tie some of that into the renovation plans for this building. We are seeing an increase in general liability and property insurance, as well as an increase in vehicle insurance. So there's some increases there. If you look at debt service, this is all stuff that's fixed, so it's not like we can play with that. This year, we will be paying off the fire tanker and the 2022 international truck, which is a savings of about 40,000. We're bringing on this new truck, so at the end of the day, there's gonna be kind of an eventual wash with debt service,
Yeah.
but there's some changes there. There was a slight interest adjustment on public works bond, so that you'll notice a little bit of a weird small change there.
Yeah.
Under public works, the overall theme to this is that things like machinery, trucks, those repairs into FY 26, those costs are gonna be down because we're gonna have newer equipment. We're gonna have done a ton of work this year, motor replaced and the grader, all these kinds of things. So the repairs should be down, so the budget's down for that. We still have money aside for it, but not as much. Road maintenance, on the other hand, is going up because of associated costs there with materials and things. So there's kind of a balance there. Contracted services, for FY 26, we're looking at renting a mower. Overall costs are down on contracted services.
Yeah.
Materials, salt, about the same price, gravel, no significant increases. We're actually on track to come in under budget for FY 25, knock on wood. Sand, we're a little bit over for this year. For FY 26, we're gonna change how we do this. Rather than our trucks going and getting the sand and bringing it here, we're going to be buying the sand as delivered. That is going to increase the cost of the sand, but it will greatly cost both the fuel costs on our end and it will free personnel to do other projects. We generally truck 200 loads of sand a year, and it takes, and we can get 9 loads per day. So just in terms of thinking about how much time and energy is going towards that. So the sand costs are gonna go up, but the fuel costs in the budget are going down substantially because we're not making those 100 and X number of trips to Franklin, wherever we're going to get sand.
So I guess that's a significant amount less wear and tear on those
Less wear and
vehicles.
tear on the
if
trucks.
they're
Yep.
Making those runs.
Yep. Culverts, we're a little over budget for FY 25. We've seen a price increase. It now costs about $1,400 to replace one crossing. So it's 2 culverts to do that. So for every culvert replacement we do, which is 2 culverts, it's $1,400 just in the culverts themselves. This coming FY 26, we're budgeting to do 3 culvert replacements, so 6 culverts. Again, vehicle maintenance overall, this should go down, though we are seeing some increase in oil costs and hydraulic fluid. I will note, this isn't factored into this at this point, but we do have this kind of like sell the J truck, fix the 2016 International, or sell the International. I mean, so there's some things we gotta work out there, but there will be some revenue coming from the sale of equipment that could offset the cost of repairs to the International truck. There's nothing in here that's reflecting of that. It's just a conversation that we're gonna have to have at some point. Also in Public Works is paving match for Fuller Bridge Road. This is $40,000. Also is the Better Back Roads grant match for the work on Amadon Road. Buildings and grounds, we don't see any big changes. People will note in the compensation for both Public Works and the office staff, those costs have gone down. That's due to some personnel changes and the associated changes with benefits packages. So we are seeing some slight savings in personnel. So overall, we're looking at a budget of $1,441,377.91, of which $1,008,735.91 will be raised by taxes, resulting in a projected tax rate of 0.5947. That is a 2.8% increase from the tax rate last year. As a point of reference, the cost of living adjustment is 2.5%, which essentially takes into account how the cost of everything has gone up by that percent. So our tax increase is 0.2% higher than the COLA. Our tax increase last year was 5.5%. So we're basically projecting an increase of less than half of what we saw last year, if that makes sense, if I said that right. So that's the budget as it's been approved by the budget committee for action by this body. Now to Claudia's question. So there's some things in here that are budgets that we get. So like the department budgets, fire, recreation, library. There's a reserve fund in here for the town hall reserve. Those are all things that we ask people for budgets for. Same goes for the assessments. So those are things that other entities ask us for because they do things in the community that support the community. With assessments and budget requests, we do ask that entities have their full written budgets to us by the deadline for budget approval. I'm not singling out the town hall committee. I say that because we've had some other folks who have come forward to say, hey, we'd love to change that to X. Now the board can do that, at this meeting here unilaterally. Those changes can also get made from the floor at town meeting. So at the floor, from the floor at town meeting, any voter can stand up and say, hey, you know what? Green Up Day sucks. Let's not give them $100. Cut it from the budget, right? Or they could say, fire department's great. Instead of 34,000, let's give them $100,000. So any changes can get made from the floor. The voters would then have to approve that change. This budget reflects what we received from entities and departments.
Yeah.
And I will say that I'm not telling the board not to add anything anywhere, but what we have told folks in the past is we give folks a deadline for a budget. If we don't get the budget, we're gonna put in the level funding or no funding, depending on what, and then we direct folks to make the ask from the floor. That's technically what we've done. Again, I'm not saying that to dissuade anybody from making a motion to do anything to the budget right now, but I'm just saying historically what we've done is used that process to try to kind of treat everybody equitably.
I mean, we're trying not to raise it, more than 3%. Because everybody's struggling to pay the taxes, so that's why we're trying to keep the expenses.
Yeah.
And I think with the mere shaving of 5,000, isn't that how we got it underneath?
That's
the
how we,
Yeah.
three?
yeah, that's how we got it under 3%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess at this point, the board's work would be to move to adopt the budget or move to adopt an amended budget. That would then get put forward to the voters at town meeting. And again, at town meeting, anybody can bring forward something to increase by anything. You make your case to the voters and the voters vote it up or down.
So is your suggestion that I bring that up at town meeting or Tosca or whoever?
I guess what I would say is
Yeah.
if this board doesn't unilaterally do that, that would be the path to
time to do
take.
it.
Yep.
Yep.
And I guess I would also just say,
And
just
we're still
for you-
fundraising and doing all that. It's just that, I guess, the safety issues of the building would be more a town thing, and then we raise money with events and stuff. A substantial amount extra
Yep.
to do the regular maintenance on the building.
I mean, we have a lot of 10,000 in this budget, so.
Right.
I mean,
Tosca's really good at fundraising though.
Right.
Can I ask a question? How much on your budget do you have for that building now for their?
10,000.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Yeah, 10, and you're
Yeah.
asking for 4 more.
Yeah,
Yes,
Yeah.
because in the basement there is the kitchen,
yeah,
and right now it's not a licensed kitchen, and the reason being is there needs to be
Yeah.
different things done to make that a real licensed kitchen that is official to be used, you know?
Yeah, it sounds like there's a lot of plumbing that needs to happen, probably like Tosca.
Yeah, there's some sink
Fantastic.
stuff, there's,
Yeah.
yeah,
And then there are other things that need to be done, which is the pen on straight, the railings and windows, and, you know, the building is not in horrible shape, but not in great shape.
so I'll make a motion to approve the budget as presented.
okay, so we have a motion from Mark to approve the budget as presented. So total budget, amount to be raised by taxes and tax rate.
That's right, as written.
You could say as presented, and then we can go back and we do need to
All right.
include
I
the
got
actual numbers,
All
but
right.
overall budget, property taxes, projected tax rate.
I don't wanna take
I'm
that
mapping.
All right, so we have a motion from Mark to approve the budget as presented. Is there a second? Thank you, Suzanne. Is there, yeah, sorry, that's a second. We don't need a third. My brain is fried. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye or raising your hand. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, motion carried and the budget's adopted. So yeah, come to town meeting. And also if you guys, one thing that would be great is you can get the committee to take another look at the budget and actually like do a little bit more work crafting that out. That could be helpful.
Yeah.
And making the
It was
argument.
sort of last minute. that
Yeah.
Tosca-
I think Tosca was doing it on her phone out of town, so,
Like-
yeah. Okay,
Thank you all for your work.
great. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, last item here is.
A
approval
quick
of-
comment, please.
Oh, sorry, yeah, Larry, what's up?
Comment? I just that I did observe several budget meetings, and all but two, I think. But I was very impressed with the data collection and how you used it to arrive where you did, and there was a lot of effort to try to keep the percent of increase down at a reasonable level. Very impressed.
Larry.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Larry.
Thank you.
Yeah, Larry was our unofficial member because we had a vacancy, but he kept refusing to be appointed to the committee. You would have gotten another sash, Larry, come on. All right, town meeting warning. Everybody should have a draft in front of you. So I'm gonna walk through this. Town meeting, 125, March 4th, 9 o'clock. First item, elected moderator, and as always, then we have the election of town officers. Select person, Emily's expiring, select person, my term's expiring. We've got a lister,
No.
collector of delinquent taxes, first constable, village center, village cemetery commissioner, center cemetery commissioner, library trustee, a fire commissioner, a planning commissioner, and a planning commissioner. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 officer elections to make. Again, the way these work is that they're nominated from the floor. If there's only one nomination, the body moves to have a moderator or me or somebody cast one ballot. If there's two people that get nominated and accept the nominations, then it goes to a ballot vote. Any questions on Article 2? No? Okay. Article 3, shall the voters approve a one-time term adjustment for library trustee seats 7 and 8, correcting the current term expiration from 2025 to 2026 to ensure the trustee term lengths are staggered per 22 VSA 143B. This is strictly a housekeeping measure that the library board put forward to get them back on track with term lengths.
Is this because they added a position?
Yeah, I think it was
Okay.
because they added somebody and then things weren't tracked correctly, so they'll stand up and explain this at town meeting, but it's an administrative change.
Okay.
Shall the voters authorize the treasurer pursuant to 32 VSA 4791 to collect current taxes? Shall the town vote to approve a half-cent increase in the tax rate to be allocated to the Conservation Reserve Fund? We just talked about, this has been on there since 2018. So the next three articles I want to explain because through this charter amendment process, I'm working through with the attorney to figure out what we can and can't do on town meeting day, because we really did spend a lot of time trying to figure out how can we put this to the voters on town meeting day, given the timeline we're looking at. Charter amendments and charter questions need to go through the charter revision process. The legislature did pass a law, 17 VSA 264A and 24 VSA 138, I believe are the citations there. They passed a law last year that allows towns to unilaterally enact local option taxes. They basically said, hey, if towns want to do this, we're sick of, well, they're not sick of, but like enough people like us advocated for like, why does the legislature have to approve this? Let us do it ourselves. Let us up at the big kids table and get off our back, right? And so they finally passed a law that says you don't need a charter to do that. Towns can do that themselves. There's a caveat there that allows the tax commissioner to cap this so that if every town in the state started doing it, he could be like, well, wait a second, we got to figure this out. Embedded in that law is the ability for towns that have charters to suspend a charter for no more than 3 years and change something within it. They can't get rid of it. They can't amend the charter. It's suspending the charter and then changing something pursuant to the local option tax. So Articles 6, 7, and 8 are an attempt to put forward a question to the voters on town meeting day pursuant to the local option tax that presents another option.
Six is just voted for our budget.
7, 8.
I'm sorry, 7, 8, and 9. So 6, yeah, sorry, 6 is the overall budget. That should be pretty clear.
Yeah.
So 7, 9. So 7, 8, and 9 are basically putting forward a local option tax question to the voters that presents an alternative option to striking the entire thing. Something this board has heard from a number of people is that the sales tax is a big burden. And the sales tax is something that, you know, everyone in town who buys something online, as Roberta was talking about last time, everybody pays it, whether you buy something at Sylvester's or the Jolly, or you buy something on Amazon. So that is one that like is on the backs of people in the community. It's also on the backs of folks that come here and buy stuff, but like acknowledging that it's pretty direct impact on the community. What this would propose is to amend the local option tax to get rid of the sales tax, but keep the rooms and meals tax. Annually, the average rooms and meals tax is generating about, on average, $38,000. If we dropped the sales tax, but kept the meals and rooms tax, that would still generate enough revenue to make that funding stack we've talked about whole. The voters could still go to the charter amendment and vote the entire thing out on April 1st.
Yeah.
So there's an ability to like supersede this. What this would do is it would give the voters essentially two choices. You could amend the local option tax to get rid of the sales tax, but keep the meals and rooms, or on April 1st, you can get rid of the whole thing.
Yeah.
It's laid out in 3 articles because there's 3 steps here. One is, shall the voters authorize the suspension of section 3 of the town of Montgomery charter from April 1st, 2025 to March 31st, 2028 pursuant to 17 VSA 2645A, and instead authorize the assessment of local option taxes as follows: 1% meals and alcoholic beverages and 1% rooms tax pursuant and according to 24 VSA 138 in lieu of section 3 of the Montgomery charter beginning April 1st, 2025. Second thing here pursuant to this, Article 8, is simply the establishment of the reserve fund. We've talked about this before, like reserve funds to be legally reserve funds, the town has to establish them. We've got some funds we call reserve funds that technically aren't, so the select board could go into one of these funds and be like, hey, we're using that for something else. This would establish a formal wastewater reserve fund. And then Article 9 is, shall the town appropriate the revenue generated from all local option taxes to fund the wastewater reserve fund for the purpose of repaying debt obligations related to the municipal wastewater system for Montgomery Center. So that basically says any local option tax receipts go into that wastewater reserve fund, trying to mirror what was in the charter as far as directing those funds.
Don't we have, right now, is it a local option reserve fund that we have? Isn't it designated somehow? Didn't we do that a couple of years ago?
We have, no, so the local option tax receipts are going into a wastewater reserve fund right now,
Yeah.
but it's not this is something Aaron and I realized, I think maybe like the day after town meeting last year, was like, oh, we never legally created that fund.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's like it's an administrative thing where we can create funds and put money in them, but until the town says this is a reserve fund. I mean, like, to be honest, like the machinery repair fund, it's a reserve fund with money into it. I don't know if I can find a reference to when the town formally created that. So technically, the town could go to that fund and say, hey, actually, the select board at any given meeting could be like, hey, you know what? We really want to do this different thing, so we're gonna drain that fund.
Yeah.
So with the voter approval, it actually like cements that fund as just that one use.
Okay.
We already took care of that with the grader repair.
Yeah, there's no money anyway, so what do you want? Yeah. Jesus.
And so if the project doesn't go forward, what happens? That just,
Yeah, if the whole project doesn't go forward,
it
then
just disappears.
the money's in a reserve fund and the town says, hey, we'd like to use that money for X. And then we vote and we say, great, that money's gonna go towards X. So the town could say, we want to reappropriate that to roads or to the renovations for this building or to offsetting property taxes,
So, say,
Have what?
Wait, pay off that truck you just bought for the town?
We could do, I mean, as long as it's legal, we could do whatever we want with the money, yeah.
Lower taxes, correct?
Yeah,
so say that the voters on town meeting day, I have to just read which way I'm trying to. If they authorize item 7.
Yep.
And then April 1st comes around and the vote gets rid of the charter, those items in the charter. How does that? Cause they voted yes here and they voted no there.
yeah, so that would do away with the charter.
Would
The
that,
local option tax, this is a temporary local option tax fix. We have to still go back and amend it. So the local option tax would technically continue on these two things. And the fix would be basically in March, we'd go back and
March of 26.
undo it. Yeah,
Wait a minute. Are you gonna do this thing on town meeting day?
That's why our
the
vote was
charter?
screwed off.
it was not because of this.
Okay.
It's not trying to,
Yeah.
Town meeting day, and if
Now we
people
know.
don't wanna pay, they have the choice of saying yes or no
yeah,
to the charter. About 1% or the whatever. So what happens on April 1st, when we had a petition to get it done.
Yeah.
So you still have, to after town meeting day, you still have to have a meeting.
yeah, we still have that vote still happens
Yeah.
to
Whether
do
or not
away
it
with the
happens
whole.
on-
Yeah, but then you
meeting
still
day.
have a local options tax with rooms and meals if they approve it. So now we have to, is this a ballot? Is this a ballot vote?
No,
So
we're,
this is from the floor?
yeah, cause
So
we're
we
a
gotta
floor
get our
town.
people down to that
Yeah.
meeting.
Yeah.
And get rid of this nonsense.
Yeah,
What? This happened.
Well, most people are out on friggin' whatever they do,
We'll just
spring
work-
breaks.
We'll
and-
just work. We'll have to just
yeah,
work harder.
again,
Work harder.
if folks want to influence a vote, you get people out to the polls, you get people out to the town meeting.
Still evaporates it all when we get that thing, right? Even that half, that.
If
will evaporate too.
if the charter goes down, this fix would essentially, it's temporary, right? So, yeah, the local option tax would continue, but it's not a charter.
If the charter disappeared.
The charter disappears, yes.
This overrides the charter.
Until 2028.
Yeah, but at that point, that's when we would go back and we'd say, okay, so that went forward, that's gotten killed. Let's figure out what we want to do with the money from the local option tax. And then we go back and we say as a town, next town meeting, hey, we're gonna dissolve the wastewater reserve and use that money for something else.
But this, the way that this is presented, this is only 1% on
Alcohol beverages.
meals, alcohol, and rooms, not on,
It's not on.
not
sale.
on sales,
No.
so not on anything you buy.
No sales tax.
Airbnb rooms.
Yes, Airbnbs
Yeah.
would pay on this, yes. Yep. And again, the idea was that rooms, in theory, like no one in town's paying that. Meals, yeah, people, when you go out to eat, you're hit with the 1% on that. But other people come to town and go to the restaurants, also pay that. The sales was the one that was brought up multiple times here as being like, that's a big burden.
Yeah.
And, I think there's a valid argument to say like, that's being borne on the backs of most of the people that live here. I mean, we're not a big retail community. It's not like we're Williston where we've got box stores and sales going left and right, And the sales and use out of the whole local option, is about 60%, if my mental math is correct. So like out of the overall local option tax receipts, about 60% of it is from sales. Whereas meals and rooms is the other 40%, give or take. I mean, whoever can do mental math quicker, like 76,000 overall meals and rooms, 96,000 sales and use. So maybe it's not quite a 40-60, but a greater percentage is coming from sales and use. So again,
But whether or not the charter is like voted to continue or expire on April 1st, this would remove. So just explain to me, if the vote for the charter is to continue, does this supersede that? And so I'm still
Yeah.
not paying sales tax?
yes, if the.
So this is like a
If the-
safeguard.
If the charter
right?
vote
Am I
fails,
understanding?
if the charter amendment vote fails, this would still carry forward. So this would get rid of the sales tax.
So no matter what happens with the April 1st vote,
Mhm.
if this is in the town meeting warning, this means that I no longer have to pay 1% sales tax on everything?
And then the,
If,
Yeah.
so,
it's done.
Well,
Yeah,
I'm
so-
not staying in town, so.
So here's the options, right? Nothing changes. This fails and the charter amendment fails. We move forward as is. This passes, the charter amendment fails, the local option tax. I'm not describing, I'm so tired. Yeah, this basically the voters have a choice. This measure says, keep the meals and rooms tax, get rid of the sales tax. The charter amendment says, get rid of all of it.
Yeah.
So those are the two options going forward.
But when you get rid of the sales tax, you get rid of.
Okay. Are we here now? Can we be?
Larry, can you hear us?
Yeah, Mike can hear you. Mike's on Zoom, he can hear you.
Okay. All right, great. Okay,
Yes.
so we.
I can hear you.
Okay,
What
thank
the
you.
hell happened?
Technical difficulties.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that.
You have to get a commission for that.
With the other AC adapters, but doesn't work, and I do not, we have no more battery in this thing. It's dead.
Okay,
That's okay.
so anyway,
So if that's not a sign to wrap up, I don't know what.
so again, this is essentially just trying to put options before the voters. They've got two options. One is move forward with the meals and rooms tax, and no sales tax, or get rid of all of it. And then, yeah, the 10 is to do any other business to be done at said meeting.
I wanted to get on here for another new truck, because it takes 2 years to get one. I mean, the first payment will be due for a couple of years. You get another new truck order, you get approval for another new truck, because it takes 2 years to get one built. We've got numbers.
Do we need voter approval at town meeting to buy the truck? We're not going, it's not a bond. I'm trying to remember if we've done it in the past.
No, we need to replace
We have
the
done
older
it in the
trucks we had,
past.
so we need to order a new truck, which takes
For
2 years to
2 years.
build, so it replaces, so we don't end up in the same situation we just did.
How many is there now in the fleet?
We've got 2 tandems and a ton truck.
And the broken one? And the broken one?
And the rover.
You got 4 trucks?
Yeah, and then we got the J truck.
You got 5 trucks.
Well, no, we've got 2 that are,
Yeah, we actually had 5. and they're-
well, one of them's not technically, don't have it yet, right? Did you get the new truck already?
Yeah, we did.
We did, okay. Then physically, we do, yeah, 2 of which are what we're considering selling.
Huh?
Where do we store all these extra trucks?
One's outside, broken down one.
Because we had the J truck, which was the backup truck. 2016 was the one that threw the rod through the engine, not a commission until we figure out whether we want to fix it or
So
sell
we
it.
have 2017.
Yeah, so the idea is to get back to having 4, the small CV. And then 2 tandems and then
No,
the
just get
backup.
back to 2 tandems and but have 2 dependable tandems.
Yeah, but the option we have before us is to potentially keep either the J truck or the fixed 2016 as a backup. Cause like we've been running with
Yeah.
3 tandems.
Well, we wouldn't need the backup, but we had newer trucks. I mean, that's what
Yeah.
I'm saying.
So, okay, so anyway, we have a conversation to have at some point about what do we do with the 2 trucks that need repairs? Do we fix them and keep them, fix one,
Yeah.
keep them, do we sell them? Anyway,
But in the meantime, we want to get a new one ordered,
Yeah.
because it takes 2 years to get one. So they can replace the 2017.
The rest of that panel junk, you can't put more than that?
no,
Well,
the trucks,
I mean, the rest of the truck's all right, I mean, it's like 50 grand to put a new one in.
That's not 250, but another brand one.
In 2016, so it's about 300,000 for a new one. So we just gotta figure out what, but I just wanted to get approval to order. But
so any questions on the warning as presented? I understand, Mark, what you're saying, Mark. I don't have language handy to like insert that tonight. Could we potentially do the same thing we did before and like order it with the caveat that once it's here, if we don't want it?
well, I mean, the first payment will be due for a couple of years.
And then go to the voters next town meeting with the authorization? I mean,
Yeah, I guess we can.
because the other option is to not approve this tonight, get the language for the truck, insert that, come back next Tuesday. And approve, and just have a special meeting to approve the warning.
Yeah.
Unless I can find. I might be able to pull up language from an older warning that had a truck. Actually, do we have an amount
Yeah.
for the new
Well,
one?
Yeah, it's over 300,000.
Do you remember what year we authorized the purchase of?
Well, it would be the one that we built for him, because it was that 2015. Huh?
You didn't authorize one in 22.
Yeah, when was?
The small
Yeah.
truck,
You authorized it in 22.
right,
So was that?
Yeah, but that wasn't comparable to the.
Oh. Well, no.
right, but it would be the same, like,
Well, I'm saying-
house-wise, it would be the same language, so is that what you're saying?
Oh, yeah, it's the same, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
All right, give me 1 second and cross your fingers that this works. Shall the town vote to authorize the select board to borrow up to $100,000 for a term of 3 years to purchase a new 2022 International CV 515 single axle truck with snowplow, wing and sander to replace the 2016 550 Ford truck? So, do we know?
Running, I will pay it off before the payment comes, Rodney.
This one gets paid off this year,
Yeah, that would be.
coming year.
Yeah.
So we could do, shall the town vote to authorize the select board to borrow up to 300,000
I would say,
for a term of 3 years to purchase a new,
2020. Well, but probably 2025 and 26.
and do we know, like,
Probably be a Freightliner.
Freightliner?
Yeah. Not gonna be enough.
With snowplow, wing and sander to replace the.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me get this. Okay, all right, so we're gonna add Article 10 after what is now Article 9. Article 10 shall read. Shall the town vote to authorize the select board to borrow up to $300,000 for a term of 3 years, 3 years? For a term of no more than,
It'd be 5 years.
for a term of
Yeah,
5 years,
yeah.
to purchase a new 2025. 26. 2026. Freightliner.
27.
Would be a 27, right, based on like model years.
Okay, a new 2026 or 27.
Yeah.
Yes.
Freightliner, how do you spell freight? A new tandem with snowplow wing and sander to replace the 2017 International. Okay, so Article 10 would now read, shall the town vote to authorize the select board to borrow up to $300,000 for a term of 5 years to purchase a new 2026 or 2027 Freightliner tandem truck with snowplow wing and sander to replace the 2017 International truck. That sound good? Tandem capitalized? No? Okay, I didn't know, I didn't think so, but I didn't know if like. Okay, you wanna read this, Mark? Is this? Okay. All right.
I'll explain it down.
All right, so we'll add that in. Any other? So the draft that we're looking at right now is the draft that we have in hand with this provision of the new Article 10, which is around the purchase of the truck. Good?
And then Article 11 is to do any
Is,
other
yeah,
business.
that becomes Article 11. All right, we have a motion from Mark to approve the warning.
Amended.
As amended, well.
Sure, as amended. Amended and presented. All right, we have a motion from Mark to approve the warning as amended and presented. Is there a second? We have a second from Suzanne. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye or raising your hand. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? One abstention from Leanne. Motion carries. You approve the warning on the meeting. Yeah, that's it for the agenda.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
We have a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing no discussion, we'll vote. All in favor, please signify by saying aye or raising your hand. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Go home.